So, Solicitors Regulation Authority. I actually did mention this in the last video, and it is sort of connected to the last video because we need to complain to both the bar standards about Robin Green KC to do with Oxfordshire Council, right? And this dispute with Kirklees Council I've got, right? And also Cornerstones, I think our solicitors, they're not just a chambers. I'm pretty sure Cornerstones are solicitors. They've got solicitors working there anyway. We've got serious problems with the Solicitors Regulation Authority and the bar standards, and it's to do with joint heads of different organisations, joint heads of the bar standards, joint heads of the SRA, joint heads of very big lawyers, chambers and solicitors who do administrative and constitutional law, who have been government advisors, right? They've been actually trying to advise and influence Parliament on what law it policies it has and what it allows us to do. So really that's the private sector having a big influence over our political rights and our constitutional law, and particularly if they're not going to let us have it, and particularly when, you know, if we're using constitutional right and they're saying that it doesn't exist or we can't have it, they're the ones who are meant to be in front of Parliament, in front of the Speaker on contempt, whether it's mayors, local councillors, judges, magistrates, High Court judges, sheriffs, constables, bailiffs. All these people are in breach of privilege when they intervene in parliamentary proceedings. And this generation of lawyers seem to think that they're in control of what we can and can't have, and they're going to take suitcases of money into courtrooms, and they're going to sit down with judges and decide what our rights are and aren't constitutional rights, particularly when they're advising the government. So it's very serious. Now, Sarah Rapson is the new executive, and more recently, of this Solicitors Regulation Authority. Now, the Solicitors Regulation Authority is a scam. There's no doubt about it. And the bar standards, they're both scams. They are funded by their own sector. They're basically paid for by the sector. They're not going to do anything to that sector at all whatsoever, except settle, begrudging grievances between people in that sector. Or, if there's a big company pays somebody, a lawyer, £20,000 to do a job and they don't turn up, then they'll go to the SRA. Normal commoners like us who have been fleeced or blocked or let down or they're not interested in us at all whatsoever. The Solicitors Regulation Authority and bar standards are not there to fix wider constitutional problems, lying, conspiracies, fraud, and really serious issues in the whole legal sector. They're not going to sort it out because they're in on it. They're like, we're all in. Like, we've got the cards on the table. We're in. They're part of it. They're part of the blockade, the wall that is obstructing us. And then you've got books like Professor Mark Elliott's public law book that they're all educated on. And then you've got, Professor John Baldwin who's teaching, criminal law. The CPS are absolutely not going to recognise our privileges, particularly when they're breaking them all the time and they're in contempt. So Sarah Rapson, I had one of these SRA people ring me up, right, on the telephone, and even, I've asked for reasonable adjustments and they never ring up now. They all write letters. But this guy rang me up. He just, I don't know why he rang me up actually. I mean, he should have written to me, but he rang me up, And so I got to speak to one of them. And seriously, this guy was a Brummie cowboy. Literally, you get cowboy builders. This guy was a cowboy solicitor. He's basically, I had a complaint against that Debbie Rodaway, right? And he's like, he literally, he's like, it's like the way that his tone and the way he was speaking and the words he was using and his attitude, it was like, he didn't say this, right? These aren't his words, but he might as well have said this. We're talking about reading a person's tone in their voice and their character and personality and how he was going about it, right? This is my opinion, right, on his attitude was like, effectively, he might as well have, like when you're in a room with blokes and they're all like, looking at, Girl magazine or something, or like you call a strip around. Effectively, right, he might as well have said, oh, Debbie, she's quite tidy, Debbie. She's quite fit. I don't want to take action against her, you might as well have got in bed with her. He's like, oh, Debbie Rodaway, she's a woman, she's quite tidy, and I'm not going to take action against her. She's got a clean record, no one else has had any complaints against her. So, effectively, I don't really want to take any action against her. That was his attitude, right? There were his exact words, but that was his attitude, right? And then when I mentioned Sandeep Pankahara, he was like, oh, that name rings a bell. I've had quite a lot of complaints to think about that guy. The next thing, Pankahara's been made the district judge in Westminster Magistrates Court when he was the worst solicitor ever. He lost that 2-5 case and then they automatically got acquitted at the Crown Court because the CPS pulled out. And said, oh, they can have their rights. What rights? Pray tell, what are these rights that they're so serious that you're backing out of? Do you want to mention what they are to everyone? Maybe they don't want the newspaper to, report on it and say what these actual rights are. Oh, no, they were privileged. No, we can't put that in the newspaper. Not everyone to know that. We'll just call them rights and say that there was some issue, we'll let them have their rights, not Patrick Gibbs, Peter Gotch KC, I was literally, I was having it out with him the whole time leading up to that and trying to get him to claim privileges, and he blatantly, absolutely refused to do it, even though I sent multiple evidence that, they got all the ULEZ petitions that they're representing, and he wouldn't do it. Although he did get this video footage of Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, saying, people got the right to protest. But what right? What is this right? It's not any EU law, freedom of speech or expression at all whatsoever. It's because it is a political demonstration, which is why the council can't take action against it, right? If it wasn't a political demonstration, if it was just a demonstration, right, in the 1993, Local Council Act for noise, right, you don't have any exemptions. If they'd been making noise with a normal, what you call a protest, not a political protest, they don't have any rights, but if it's a political demonstration, they're equal to the armed forces, right? So, it's all joke, but look, right, so Sarah Rapson, right, I complained about our local council. The last video that I made before this and uploaded is about Oxfordshire Council and Ryan Bridge and the Raise the Colours campaign, who are acting in a political demonstration and cause about detain, detect and deport illegal immigrants. That's what it's gathering evidence on, right? Yet Oxfordshire Council took an action against them miraculously in the High Court, who even accepted the case and took it on miraculously. And this Robin Green KC even took the suitcase of money and went and argued it right on behalf of the council. That's the entire legal department of Oxfordshire Council who are wrong. And even Diaz is wrong. Diaz, the whole High Court are wrong. And that actually happened only a week or two before. There was that Supreme Court case, who shouldn't have even heard this one either, with a Good Law Project going on about, no case to answer, blocking people on private land, no case to answer. So it's a political campaign. No case to answer. It's not even on public. It's on private land. That Noise Pollution Act doesn't matter when you're on private land or public land. It says political demonstration. Although it wouldn't be the council who was stopping you if you're on private land anyway. But the council can't. So, and what's ironic to me is that if you got the control of advertisement, it says everything to do with signs and notices, so you can use any act, right? Well, what if the signs and notices are, musical ones? What if it's a musical sign and a musical notice, right? What if you've got, like, you know, what if it's a written notice that makes a noise, right? Can use any act. 1688 Bill of Rights, right to petition. Oh, and by the way, it's a political sign and demonstration, and the council can't act against it, right? How about, you know? And I do think that these people are a sandwich short of a picnic. No one's saying they're not intelligent, but when they're a sandwich short of a picnic, they're dangerous because they're dealing with massive amounts of money. We're talking many thousands of pounds, multiple thousands of pounds, many thousands of pounds, right? Expensive tweed suits, you know, chambers, you know, like negotiating with High Court judges. But when you actually read the report from the High Court, it's wrong. It's wrong. And I don't know how these muscle men we've ended up with a really strange society where we've got these, like, Erwin R. Schneider type people, like Robin Green, who are, like, you know, flexing their muscles, their brain muscles, you know, like the vein in the temple, like, you know, flexing their brain muscles with the justice, but they're wrong. They don't actually. They're either completely corrupt and they're playing a charade to the whole public and they know that they're doing it, but no one will be stupid enough to do that, or they really don't get it. They don't quite get it, and I do. I get how all those acts interconnect and apply, and you need to know them all, and they can't understand them. Or they're ignoramus, because Mark Elliott's book and some of the administrative and constitutional law books have got enough on it for them to know that you're not supposed to interfere with parliamentary causes and matters, because, you know, High Court judges, you know, have ended up in front of Parliament, right? Even if they don't make use of it anymore, they've got nothing to fear. They're playing a media and publicity show to the public, and if the SRA don't step in and the bar standards don't step in, who can stop them? Who can stop these people? They've taken over, and they're playing a game called we're the ones who make the decisions, and we're the ones who won't do anything for anyone unless they give us the money. And even if you do give us the money, we're the ones who are going to decide, you know, what it is and what it isn't, right? Not you, not the law, the written word, the letter, or the truth or fact. Us. And at the moment, we're pretending that, you know, you don't have any rights. There's no constitution. You don't have privileges. We're playing this stupid EU game, right, which it only applies to normal, regular citizens in normal business, freedom of speech and expression, which is absolutely sweet FA to do, with the reason why, if everyone was ticking over on the freedom of speech and expression in EU law, why would they put a clause into the Noise Act where a political demonstration is completely exempt, no one can act against it in a local council, and it's equal to the military and army? That's not freedom of expression that you argue proportionality or, you know, what's reasonable or not in a court, because you can't act, right? There's something wrong with these people. Now, what actually gets to the point of this video eventually, Rapson. So I got a letter from the Solicitor Regulation Authority saying that I complained about the solicitors who work at the council, right? And they say, no, it's a civil dispute, or it's an administrative disagreement, right? No, they're lying. Right? They're lying and they're breaking the law and they're refusing to accept my documents or recognise them, right? And they were saying, oh, it's a civil or administrative, you know, friction, whatever, right? It's not actually not, it's not even really called civil, right? It's actually, there's this word here, municipal. It's a great word because we don't really hardly use it anymore. Municipal, right? Municipal it's an adjective that describes things belonging to or relating to a city, town, or local government. It can also refer to financial investments issued by local governments or act as a brand name. Common meanings and uses in local government the city, town, or local council, mayor, or public administration, and public services, right? So we're talking about the solicitors for the municipal council. Now, the Parliamentary Papers Act says civil or criminal, but we know the civil matters are the local council. It's not like it's not tort law, Part A and Part B. Civil, right, originates from the local quarter sessions, because some areas didn't have a council. They had the quarter sessions and made the decisions in the local area. And there were civil decisions, right? You know, who can build cottages or houses, you know, what we're doing with the money for the road maintenance in the local area, until you get a council. And you've got all these, like, you know, you've got court of common requests and all these other things asking for permissions and consents, right? When you establish a council with a mayor, like the London Corporation, right, it takes authority on making decisions and orders instead of the quarter sessions that come around on the circuit, right? And it had justices, and in fact, the quarter session judges actually went to the town hall. In a lot of places, they had the normal stipulary magistrates in the town hall, and they had the business for the council, and they had the quarter sessions in there as well, right, with the clerk of the peace. It was all in the town hall. So the whole thing was in the town hall, right? Even when you petition Parliament, you go through the town hall, puts the seal of the mayor on it, or town council, or justices, right? Particularly when people are doing private bills, the council can do private bills. You can oppose the council in private bills or public business. Now, when they've got solicitors now in the local council, really, those solicitors who are working in the local council, right, they're fulfilling a role which theoretically is similar to the legal advisor in a magistrate's court, or in a civil court, you've got the administrative staff, right? They work for the council advising on law, right, to the councillors. That's the similar to what the legal advisor does, the clerk in the magistrate's court. In fact, under the Seditious Meeting Act, you had to, if you put a notice in a newspaper and you didn't get permission from the council, you had to give a copy of the advertisement to the clerk of the peace. Now, these are advertisements which might have got prosecuted against, you know, for sedition or criminal charges, or if you didn't follow the proper procedure. And these notices that involve private bill processes or public petitions, you might end up getting prosecuted. And that's where you can use the Parliamentary Papers Act, right? Particularly if it is opposing the council in a private bill, right? Or something like that, or raising a matter to Parliament. Now, so civil, the council does hear civil matters, but you've got this word municipal, right? But it's still... Local councils don't hear criminal cases anymore. They used to do, because they had, like, it was all in the town hall, and they had different days of the week for it, and they had some of the aldermen and some of them were magistrates, right? But now they're in totally different buildings, and it's not all one unitary organisation anymore, right? The local council can still issue fines and get the magistrates court to enforce it, but they have to, like, you know, tell them about it and pass notices over, and you can get a judicial review against the council, right? But they're trying to make out that there's not this thing called Parliament and it's got nothing to do with the local council, right? Which is not the case. The case is that it does. Now, you will find in the journals of Parliament that municipal, right? Municipal is directly connected to Parliament under civil matters, not criminal. And they've got mayors, justices of the peace in front of Parliament on contempt, because I've got the computer running now in the background. We're going through every single journal. I didn't do a thorough job of it last time. I used Gemini, and you just do it like you ask a question, you press the button, and then it goes and finds some answers and brings it back. And we were doing that, and Gemini didn't do the greatest job of it. It could have done a better job, but I was only just getting familiar with AI. And now I've got it like doing like super tasks, ticking over in the background, going through every single thing. And in fact, Parliament have tried to block off access to a lot of these books and journals now. So we're having to get them through, like, you can use the Wayback Machine, which is basically old links that are still cached online. Like, the information is still there because it got saved at an earlier period when it got scanned and checked, right? So what I actually did, I was only asking it to look for certain things before. And then I got this other website helping me called Replit, and it made a bit of a massacre of it all because it was pulling things out of my study that I didn't necessarily ask it to pull out, just because it was in there, like, conversational, right? But I'm doing a lot better job of it now. I know what I'm doing, and we're actually literally going for the entire history of England, and we've got there thousands of instances, and now we're just getting onto the Parliamentary Papers Act part of it, and I'm going to send a full report in. So, what is this about? Well, it's actually, what it's about is the solicitors in the council, right, are meant to be impartial. They're meant to be impartial and unbiased, and they're meant to declare their interests, right? So, like, if you're acting to protect a local scheduled monument or ancient site or something like that, they're not meant to have a personal opinion about it. And I think that these people at Huddersfield do have a personal opinion about it. And, they're trying to make out that, like, this area of law doesn't exist. There's no such thing. There isn't a procedure. And then they don't even want to engage or talk to you about it. They write, like, one letter reply saying, like, don't think this is a law. That's not good enough. But yeah, all the builders are getting chaperoned in VIP treatment. They come into the council, have big meetings with big tables with an entire, like on Back to the Future when Doc Brown, hey, I'm sorry, Marty, I'm sorry I couldn't build this model to scale, but it's like I'm built an entire model of the whole town, right, with the town hall, with the electric cables going over from the town hall. Like, our railway station actually is exactly like that. Ironically, but it's a railway station, not the original town hall, which actually is over the other side of the town. But we've actually got one of those Back to the Future style building things. Actually, it's like the Back to the Future set, right? Which is ironic. These people, right? They don't even really want to have to reply to you on the phone. It's not a proper surgery unless you're one of these citizens, like unless you like own the local pub and you've got loads of people backing you up, or you're in with some kind of like chaperone clique when the council's got his Lady Hen follows around with the ducks walking around, Andrew Cooper going around doing some survey with a clipboard, and he's got 8 women following him around. These type of women are different. They can sort of it's like Simon Says, these women can get literally, like the council doing press-ups on the floor, those type of women, literally kind of like Colchester Council Watch, like that Rachel and Colchester Council Watch. They can get things done. They can get a councillor, then they're like, sit up, lay down, jump 5 times, now spin round 6 times, now, what time to shop, get me a bottle of milk, now come back. They've got control of these councillors. But normal citizens like you and me, who are by ourselves and we're not being well, and we don't want to have to read the ridiculous lies and excuses that their customer services staff come out with, like this Chris Reed guy, who's literally, he's a human bollard. It's like the customer services from the local councils, a lot of them now are just like a human bollard. There's not even any point having a person there. You might as well just have like a metal bollard and then paint a face on it. You might as well just get some felt tip pens, or some paint set. Get you could get this is the type of thing that the council actually like to do, get loads of kids round and get the paints out, usually, it's therapy, the council love that, that's what the council's favourite project is, get some kind of room with some tables and chairs and get some kids in and start painting, right? They love that. That's like the bread and butter of the council, right? You can even do it with, social care or whatever. We'll paint up a bollard and call it, customer services, right? There's a bollard, try and get past it, right? It's like a metal bollard, it's no entry, no matter what you do or what you write, it's just like, right, I'm being a bollard, you shall not pass. This is the thing. So, kind of getting a bit sick of all that. So Rapson, it's not friction. It's not friction. It's not like a civil dispute, right? We've got a municipal council and we've got solicitors who are meant to be trained and educated and serve a function. And we're submitting a form, an application, particularly when you put it down on the official objections, right? And they're trying to say that, this form's not valid. Well, if it's not valid, how come I went into the solicitors, picked up a Bible, swore the oath on it, the solicitor signed it, right, checked the form, right, and then said, okay, thank you very much, sir, that's, £10, please, right? That's not nothing, and, it's actually, it's a legal document that is filled in properly, right? And when it says, this shall be stayed, well, who's going to stay it? Well, like the councillors who voted it through, the councillor who voted, right, they're in breach of parliamentary privilege. So that would be, one of the Labour councillors who's lost his seat, right? Because that was the last thing that the council did was pass the order. Literally, the last thing the Labour council did was pass the order, and every single Labour councillor lost their seat, right? They're the ones who passed it. So they're the ones who got to unpass it, right? The Strategic Planning Committee, they voted it through. They can unmake the order. They don't have justices and judges in the council anymore, right? And the legal services staff are the same as the legal advisor equivalent or the administrative staff, right? It says the court or judge. That means, right, now, equivalent after 1970, the council or the councillors who voted that order through, right? The council or the councillors, because it is no longer in the town hall with, some magistrates sitting there on Tuesday and Thursday who sort out, civil orders and other matters, in intermediary matters between the council, different departments, and particularly if you go to Parliament, because they've got to have one of them's got to put the seal of the council on it and stamp it on, right? Who puts the seal of the council on if the council want to do a private bill? Get Robin Green KC to do it, although he's not a parliamentary agent, so they definitely won't be sending him in. Only 1 to 2 private bills are being put through Parliament every session anyway. Soon there aren't going to be any. There isn't going to be any public or private business hardly left in the council. And in fact, the public petitions had nearly died. It was down to less than 100. And if it hadn't been Tony Blair doing that electrical digital website in 2006, people wouldn't be doing it. But they've actually reintroduced it, so it's not a judicial matter with serious proceedings and privileges, right? They're trying to make out that it's some kind of, I don't know, some sort of policy website or something, when it's not. It's actually a serious judicial process, right? So, and anyway, the thing with the 1979 Ancient Monuments Act, right, is that, like, they're trying to make out that, you've got to be like a landowner or a guardian to have an interest in future ownership. Why would they do that? I had this out with the AI. Well, like, why would you make an act, and if you already own the land, right, or you were going to inherit it, why would they say that, if you get an interest in buying it when you already own it, or like you're going to inherit it anyway? Why would another person with an interest in future ownership have an interest in future ownership if they already owned it or were going to own it by default, right? At some point, it would be completely and totally pointless, right? And like when in Scotland and Wales, any person can apply for a protection certificate, right? So why wouldn't they have it in England? Something kind of a little bit like that, but a little bit slightly different procedure, right? They wouldn't have it completely and utterly different where no one can except someone who already owns it or is going to own it, Well, you don't have an interest in future ownership. If you're going to inherit it, it's like, you don't need to be interested in it. It doesn't matter if you're interested in it or not, because, like, if it gets passed on to you, you're going to end up owning it anyway, regardless of whether you're interested in it or not, right? So it doesn't, it doesn't make sense. So anyone can actually express an interest in future ownership, and when it goes down on the objections, it's like for real, right? Not like the council ignore it and they still like pass it and vote it through anyway, even though the Port Laureate turns up, right? And apparently begs the council not to pass the order, right? So it's and now I'm knocking these certificates out, and I'm having to, literally go through the entire history of Parliament to prove that, like, it exists. There is such a thing, right? Clearly it exists because he's got an act of law for it. Oh, no, it doesn't apply here. Well, if it doesn't apply here, then where does it apply to? Well, municipal, right? It does apply because the actual Hansard records are full of mayors being called into Parliament, not only when they're applying for things, but when people are taking actions against them, particularly when people have got grievances against the council and interventions and so forth. There's loads of them in there. So, Rapson is responsible for SRA regulated solicitors. Those 3 solicitors on Kirklees Council are SRA regulated, right? They're lying. They're telling lies. And they're refusing to engage when, right? This is the thing. They're a municipal council paid for by the taxpayer. We pay their wages, right? They work for the public. That's why they're wanting the council tax, off us all, right? Community Public Services describes community facilities and utilities run by the city, such as municipal water, municipal pools, or waste collection, right? So it's local government. In a way, really, although it's only local council, it's not Parliament, those legal staff, legal officers, legal services, legal advisors are sort of like the equivalent at a local level of the Solicitor General, right? They're like the local equivalent of the Solicitor General or the Attorney General, right? But in a local council, not in Parliament. And, they act for and on behalf of the council, but we pay them for the job and role, and they're not going to take they can't actually take our side and represent us. They're meant to advise the councillors, but when we submit a form, it's like a court. And another thing, they were rejecting letters. They had people with wheelie bins going to the Royal Mail to collect it, and they told them if it's not got a specific name on it, you have to send it back, right? I can absolutely guarantee you now, right? If you go to Leicester Magistrates Court or any Magistrates Court and you write on that letter, Leicester Magistrates Court, 15 Pocklington's Walk, Leicester, right, LE1 6BT, right? They do not return it back. They do not return to sender. If you don't write the name of the judge on or the administrator, you write no name on it at all, right? It's in a building address, right, registered. Right? Now, people are sending letters to the council, authority, a municipal council, legal representations, and they've got a set of Egypts, right, wheelie bin wheelers, going backwards and forwards with wheelie bins full of letters, and someone's told them, given them directions, if it does not have a person's name on it, we'll send it back, even though it's a legal submission to a local municipal council authority, right? Which has voting on decisions, democratic decisions, voting on them, right? It's a chamber voting on decisions. So it's making legal decisions, right, in the local area. You don't need a messenger at arms to deliver to the local council that we fund, right? They're not meant to be an opponent. They're meant to be like the court staff, the administrative staff, the legal advisor, the clerk. You send a letter, the clerk looks at it, he opens it, he reads what it's about, he gives it to the relative person, right? The clerk of the court does not receive a letter that says, Leicester Magistrates Court, building, right? Open it up, what's it about, right? He doesn't say, oh, it's not got the judge's name on it, I'm sending it back, right? So this is part of the legacy of the corrupt Labour Council. It's a strategic policy they've got inside. Say, hey, we can really beat a lot of people and get rid of them and send letters back and break their will if we just send their letters back, right? This needs to go to the local council ombudsman, because no one in their right mind would do that. And I did put the name on the letter, and it still got sent back. And it's happened in that Crown Prosecution Service place do that in Leicester as well at Prince's Court. They send letters back and say no one there when there is someone there. It's the official freaking address, right? So we need to go to the local council ombudsman and find out how long this council has been sending letters back when it says the council or the department, and how long it's been going on for, who implemented the instructions, because that's deep-seated corruption. They're trying to beat people with an excuse, right? They're trying to beat and defeat. They're acting as the Labour Party versus the Labour Party's opposition, right? And they can easily strategically beat an opponent by coming out with bullshit policies saying, oh, if it hasn't got the person's name on it, we'll send the letters back, right? Right? No municipal council court chamber for voting on democratic votes would ever do that. And it's the same type of thing with our local polling station here, when they never had the serial numbers on the polling tickets. They were just a blank piece of paper, right, for quite a few years. I reported it, and it all got changed, right? It's that. It's corrupt. And we've even got local Tory councillors here who got re-elected they've got illegal police canvassing on their flyers they gave out, right? It's all corrupt. The council here in Kirklees is several deep corrupt practices, including like electoral issues, severe issues, right? And then you've got Tim Bearder, who's going to be all, like really modern and, we're the Oxford Council, we're all savvy, we're all up to date with the latest, reasonable needs policies, etc., right? But yet he's sending Robin Green KC in to oppose a political demonstration, which he can't even do, just because he doesn't like it. So you'd think you'd get more from Oxfordshire Council, but they're corrupt in a different way. They're corrupt not in the logistics of people sending letters in, because I actually rang Tim Bearder, right? I telephoned him, and you got to think, right? I think Oxfordshire has got a city council. So they've got a city council, which is different. They're really, really busy city that's, got a university in it and all the hustle and bustle in the business, right? That's the city council. But the Oxfordshire County Council, I rang Tim Bearder's phone and he just answered it. I was talking to him like, oh, this is the head of the Oxfordshire Council, right? That's got to be something, right? He's picked his phone up and answered it. Hello. I was speaking to him. I was saying, Tim, I'm not very happy about this legal case that you're taking. Could be a contempt of Parliament. It's quite serious. Have you looked into privilege? You know much about it? He's like, oh, well, we'll just all wait to see what goes on. We'll wait to see what happens, right? Well, no, I wouldn't wait to see what happens. They're trying to get it through. You're trying to get it past the goalkeeper. Like, you're trying to get it past Mr. Justice Diaz, who shouldn't have taken the case on anyway, right? So, you think of somewhere like Oxfordshire, you think, oh no, they can't have these weird, deep-seated corrupt practice problems that we have. But, it's on a different level. It's kind of like on this sort of like, the Green Party, woke sort of, Ed Davey attitude. It's sort of like the Ed Davey, Lib Dem, Green Party, woke sort of type thing. Oh no, we can't have Raise the Colours putting their campaign around because they're, we're going to not let someone have a campaign that we don't like. That means they're not allowed to have a campaign, right? That's just democratic fairness for you. Ours is different. It's in West Yorkshire. We've got a very insidious. Things go missing in the post or don't get there or got sent back. It's like some sort of poltergeist type procedural thing. and we've managed to get rid of all the councillors, all these Labour councillors who've been in there forever, and change all the councillors, brand new set of councillors, but we've still got problems because it isn't, so that it's not the councillors. And this is why I believe it's the administrative staff, because I think that the full-time paid administrator, lawyers and customer services are the council. And I think that, a lot of these naive councillors who get voted in and elected don't actually really truly know about politics. They don't really know properly about politics. Some of them have been there a long time and picked it up. But, when you get these new councillors in, that they're getting told this and getting told that, by legal services. It's a little bit like the clerks of Parliament, Kenneth Williams in the Journal Office, and, the clerks of Parliament, Eve Sampson, have been, misguiding and misadvising people about, MPs about privileges, for the last decade. And when MPs get voted in, they all get taught to speak properly, set up their office and staff. They get told how to talk and what language to use. They get, groomed like little private schoolboys, comb your hair, given the little uniform and everything, and told how to talk properly, put a piece of cardboard in their mouth, put a piece of cardboard in their mouth so they speak properly, right? And then they prep them all up, and then they're ready to go. They can be broadcast on the TV in front of the whole nation, right? In freaking Parliament, with a question for the Prime Minister or whatever. This is a thing, but they're getting lied to about the rights and privileges of the whole country. So we've got problems. So yeah, Sarah Rapson, the SRA are trying to make out that it's not their problem. It's not their responsibility that 3 councillors who are Solicitor Regulation Authority licensed and governed are lying to the public, and the public are actually paying their wages. And they're trying to make out that it's some sort of administrative friction or civil dispute. It's not. What it actually is I am submitting a legitimate form which is filled in on a prescribed legal process, right? And they say it doesn't exist, which is a blatant lie. And they're not even trying to do the research themselves. I've got to pay. I've got Zara AI in the background ticking over now. I've had to put 40 quid into it to get through all these journals automated in the background. I'm not just going to sit there having to type it in to Gemini and then press the button every 3 minutes. Press the button. I'm not sitting there, right, doing that because it takes forever. I want it to do it for me, and now this time we're doing it properly. So I'm going to be sending the report in. They're all in contempt of Parliament. The whole entire legal sector is pulling a fast one on us, and it's down to Professor Mark Elliott's public law books, and they're all in on it. They're team. It's like team legal sector. It's like Sadiq Khan's, team legal. Well, it's not the legal team. It's got to be team legal. So then they can all have a group hug in the room, right? And then they can all put their hands together, and then they can go 3, 2, 1, and they'll jump up in the air and go team legal, yay, go team legal. It can't be Sadiq Khan's legal team. It's got to be team legal, because that's like Ed Davids, that's politically correct. Go team legal. Go team legal, yeah. Okay, it's now Robin Green's going to go into, he passed the rugby ball to, Tim Bearder, and he's going to throw the rugby ball over to, Robin Green, and he's got Mr. Justice Diaz, right? Go team legal. It's and you got Sarah Rapson, might as well be there with the freaking pom-poms. Sarah Rapson might as well be there with, you might as well have Sarah Rapson, that Brummy cowboy, and then that, blonde hair, blue eyes guy they've got on the advertisement, the totally fake Solicitors Regulation Authority advert, with some sort of jazz music in the background. Hey, here at the Solicitors Regulation Authority, we're a legitimate company, we're a legitimate authority even, right? You can trust us because here is, Richie from the SRA. Look at Richie, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. But that's like a TV advert, to try and sell, cookies or something. The Solicitor Regulation Authority, it's like, who can we have in the advert to make it look like we're legitimate? Oh, we'll use this guy, right? It's like a sales pitch, buy the gadget, right? And this is the problem with Sarah Rapson, right? She needs to face reality. They're trying to promote themselves as legitimate, honest, when they're not legitimate and honest. They're go team legal, right? They stood there, all with a different letter on their shirt, saying GOTAM legal, right? And then when Robin Green goes into the High Court, for Oxfordshire Council, right? They're cheering. Sarah Rapson's like, go team legal, yeah, where's my pom-poms, right? Bollocks. They're all working together, joint heads, right? Joint heads, right? Put the heads together, right? They're all in on it, joint heads. You might as well fuse them all together, because they're even sending their mates in, their buddies, their pals, to even advise the government, right, on what its policies should be around our rights and privileges. So, and that is, there's probably some criminality going on in that as well, because if the legal sector's denying us our rights and they're all trying to pretend that there's only EU law, and then you've got Robin Green's one of the main protagonists in it, and their buddies and pals are advising the government to, you shouldn't let these people have their rights, and we're definitely not going to let them have them, right? Neither is Peter Gotch, even if you beg, scream or plead, or even send him a full, itemised, detailed, thorough research paper on it, he says, I'm not going to do it, right? So it's like, when you hold a biscuit up for a dog to try to jump to it, jump a bit higher. Every time it jumps, lift your hand up, you can't reach it, right? That's what they're doing with our rights. You're going to have them, you can't have them, jump higher, right? We'll put some more money into it, put some more money into it, maybe if you get a few suitcases with, stacks of money in it and stand on the top of them, you might be able to reach it, but then we'll lift it up a bit higher. Oh, look how much money can they pull out? How much money can we get out of these people? And that's the problem with the entire legal sector. They're only actually doing it for the money. And they've got a monopoly now on what we're like. They decide what rights we can and can't have, rather than the law deciding and the Constitution deciding, because they're not actually meant to be. They're not meant to be running like a racket on our rights, but they've managed to, and something needs to be done about it. So I'm not happy with Sarah Rapson. The SRA are corrupt. And their policy is absolute bollock. It's like it's specifically designed so flip a coin. Any word that you use, right, has got they've got it set up. So it's even if you stood out in the rain, right? Oh, I'm stood out in the rain, right? Well, you might not be getting wet. Well, but I'm obviously, if I'm sitting out in the rain, I'm going to be getting wet. Well, the raindrops might not hit you yet, or they might just be, they might be falling at the side of you, right? Things like that. It's we've got a policy, right? The policy's it might be raining, but the policy is that doesn't necessarily mean that you're wet, right? But, that type of mentality, I'm quite certain that if they had a window, right? I thought of this today, right? If the solicitor's regulation had a window, right, when you go to a canteen at school, we've got a little window there with a shelf on it, right? And you tell them what you want, right? If you go there with a complaint, right, and let's say your complaint is a 2x4 piece of wood, right, and you put it through the window, right, I'm sure that they'd get it out and then they'd put it straight up, and then they'd pull it against the window and say, oh look, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit through the window, because when I hold this plank of wood straight up like this, the top and bottom of it it's too tall. Yes, but I just put it straight. I just put it like long ways straight through the window to pass through it to have a look at it. Yes, but look, it doesn't fit. This is their policy is like a piece of wood, right? And it's like, you pass them the complaint through the window, it perfectly fits through, and then they come back and say, oh, look, it's not fitting, because it's like he gets a piece of wood, he puts his arm out of the window, and then he turns it right straight up and then pulls it back, and he won't go back in because he's elongated it, and he's not put it long ways. That's what they're doing with their policy. It's like, oh look, I can turn these words around and use proportionality and reasonableness to reason away this piece of wood from through the window, right? This is a thing, and that is, at the end of the day, they're all solicitors, and they're playing a defence game. They're not actually taking complaints on. They're defending the sector. And when you figure out how they're financed and how they're run, only a fool in that sector would have an authority that was going to actually do something about them all when they're corrupt and shut them down, right? They're definitely there to facilitate and keep it going as long as they can and make sure that, Robin Green and, his colleagues don't get shut down for being corrupt and subverting and undermining the rights of the realm. And definitely when they're advising Parliament to not let us have those rights. So we've got serious problems. I'm not happy with Sarah Rapson. These people need to be arrested. They need to be investigated and arrested, and all their computer systems checked with AI, the whole complaints, the whole lot. And we need to go to the local authority ombudsman.